Hey there neighbors, Kevin here with the etrailer, and today we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the MORryde Safe-T-Rail here on our 2017 Jayco Eagle Fifth Wheel trailer. So the whole reason behind this install video today is safety. This last weekend, me and my family were out at Carlyle Lake enjoying ourselves, and my mom wanted to step out of the camper and go out and clean the table after we finished dinner, and missed the last step here on our pull-out steps, tripped and fell, and when she hit the ground she ended up breaking her ankle, and now the rest of our camping trips for the rest of the year are going to have to be postponed because she's not going to be able to make it up and out of the camper while she's in a wheelchair. Now this could have been easily avoided with a much more stable set of stairs and a handrail that would go the entire length of the stairs. And that's exactly what we did today. I've swapped over to some fold-out steps so we have a nice stable base to start with. And for the handrail, I've removed the old wobbly, generic old handle that was on every single trailer from the dawn of time here. And this just honestly doesn't really cut it in most circumstances, especially if you have children that are coming up and down your camper steps. With this being a fifth wheel, it's sitting a lot higher up than your typical travel trailer, so it's just a real safety hazard for those little kids and anyone who's a little bit older. Now, when we pop this out, we don't have, maybe the first step of this is going to have coverage with our old handle. With our new one, we can easily pop this out, and we now have 54 inches of handrail here, which brings us all the way safely to the ground. So even if we are still using our pull-out steps and we didn't have the fold-down steps, we would have the ability to keep our hand on a rail the entire way in and also out of our trailer. The handrail alone is a major upgrade, but the big thing here is also these step above steps from MORryde to pair it with, and these are going to give us a nice stable base because it's no longer just relying on the mounting brackets up on our trailer. Now it has feet that are going to be touching the ground and giving us that nice stable step, so that way each step we take, whether it's in or out of our camper, is going to be nice and strong. Now, to make sure that this is going to be a compatible option with your trailer, there's a few measurements you're going to want to take first. Now, the first one being our width here from our door threshold over to any objects that we might have mounted up on our wall or any slide outs. So you can see our slide out right here. We have our flange that's going to stick out past our slide out. We want to make sure that that's at least 4 1/4 inches away from our door entry. And then we also want to make sure that any awnings or any other kind of attachments, sometimes you might have a light or some other windows, anything that they wanted to mount to the side of the trailer, all right here. You might also find you have like that little dog leash holder. So if that's the case, you might have to move some of that stuff over. In our case, the awning was more than 2 1/2 inches away, so we did have enough space for the bracket to actually sit here. Now the next thing is making sure that everything is nice and flush. We can't set this where it's going to be kind of sticking out. So if you do have any kind of trim or maybe like a gasket going over that separates the body of the trailer and then that bottom trim piece that they have, you might have to cut it just like we did and just kind of pry that out a little bit so that way you have a nice flush surface for this to mount up to. Now down at the bottom here, we want to make sure that we have enough clearance from the corner of our door threshold down, so that's going to be 1 7/8 that you're going to need. A lot of times they will also place a light right here, so that way when you're stepping in or out of your trailer in the dark, you have some visibility. If that's the case, that is something you would want to have to move to get it out of the way so you can get your bracket mounted up. Now this is going to come with in a couple different pieces, starting out with our main piece here, the actual handrail, and then this bracket right here with our hinge. That's going to all kind of go on first, and then you're going to have a second bracket that you're going to mount up top. Now this one I have is the long bracket, but they do give you a shorter one. It's really just going to be up to you whether you use the short or the long bracket, and that's typically just dependent on where the previous mounting holes are, because we just want to make sure that we're covering it up. With this being a longer bracket here, that also gives you a little bit more room if you wanted to add anything to it. With it being steel, you can use a magnet on it, and that's actually what's going to help hold this up into place. So if we look at our handrail right here, as we slide this up, it's got a strong magnet that's going to help snap it up against there so we don't have to worry about this popping out. Now there is a little bit of added security here. We have a pin that we can pop right through, so that way we 100% know for sure this will not pop out while we're out on the highway, even if we hit some bumpy road. Aside from checking those measurements out to make sure this is going to fit, there are a couple items that you will want to pick up if you are installing this yourself. First one being some butyl tape, because we're going to be putting butyl tape down this whole bracket as well as our upper bracket, and that's going to help seal up our screw holes as we shoot those screws through and prevent any water from leaking into our wall of our trailer. You'll also want to pick up some gasket maker or silicone, so that way you can fill in the previous mounting holes, because those are not going to line up with the new mounting holes in our new handrail here. Aside from that, the only other thing you really need is probably a 1/8 inch drill bit, so that way you can drill into the wall of the trailer and get each one of those screws in place, because these are not self-tapping screws. And then you might need to have a multi-tool so you can cut any kind of trim piece here. Typically, you might find it is a kind of rubber gasket trim piece that's over that, and you could cut that with just a razor blade. But in our case, it was just metal that they kind of folded over it and then crimped it down and then caulked both sides of it, so that way it can't open up or get any water in there. So aside from that, it really is just a Phillips head bit, so that way you can shoot in those screws, and that's really all you need. So this is something I do think you could do at home, super easy, and have done in just a few minutes. But if this is something that you just don't have the tools for, or don't have the time to do so, and want to make sure that you get this safety rail in place, then please feel free to use our dealer locator, and you can enter in your zip code to find a shop near you and get it professionally installed. If you are wanting to do this yourself, then stick around and I'll show you how to. Starting off our install, we're going to be removing our old door handle. In my case, I have a Phillips head screw in there, so we're just going to pop those out. And then we're just going to clean up the area a little bit. So you can see there's some butyl tape left over and just like dirt and stuff like that that's just kind of gotten back behind the mounts. So it's a good time to take like a shop towel, rag, anything you got, and then some alcohol. Just clean it up before we go ahead and put anything else in there. And then also you're going to want to pick up some gasket maker or silicone and fill in the old mounting holes, because we will not be reusing those. All right, I've used some gasket maker, but a lot of time people are just going to use silicone. And I'm just going to kind of clean this up a little bit. Doesn't really matter because we are going to be covering it up with the new bracket, but I like to be a little bit of a perfectionist sometimes. Next, we are going to butt our railing up against the bottom corner of our door frame, and we are going to have to remove this little piece of trim that kind of folds over for this bottom trim piece here. So I'm going to mark that with my razor blade. That way we can come back and just cut that off. And just to be just enough for the railing backing here, so that bracket on the back to actually sit flush up against the body of our trailer. So you don't have to take too much off. Looks like we're gonna have probably 2 inches worth of it to trim out of there. And I'm just gonna use my multi-tool and just be super careful. I'd probably score any caulk with my razor blade first, just like so. That might be enough. I might have to trim a little bit more out, but I don't want to go too far and cut into the frame or the wall here. So at this point, I'd probably grab like a putty knife or a flat screwdriver, and then you can try and peel that off, but still got some sealant holding me up here. Like it kind of went around the trim that's behind it almost. Yeah, so I got a little bit more I need to trim off here. And we should be good to go. All right, now that I've cut out that trim piece, I'm going to make some drill marks. And I am just using a 1/8 inch drill bit for right now. At this point, I'm gonna also pull the pin and slide our handle out just a bit. So that way I can keep making my drill holes here. Made marks in each spot here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some butyl tape on the back of our railing. And that's going to help seal up each one of our screw holes, and it wraps itself around the threads, so that way no water is going to leak in through our mounting screws. All right, now that we have the back of our mounting bracket all butyl taped up, we are going to set this in place. That butyl tape should help hold this on just a bit for us while we start shooting in some of our screws here. I'm gonna set down our rail and we'll start sending in our hardware. These screws are going to be included in your kit. They're going to come black and they are not self-tapping, so that's why drilling is important here. Now for the top bracket, there are two different options. There's a long one and a short one, and depending on where your old mounting holes sit, you might be able to get away with just using that short one. In our case, kind of showing off the old mounting holes and just doesn't really look good. So I am going to go with the long bracket, and once we get that in there, that's a good spot. I know there's a lot of magnets out there, especially for the people that are RVing a lot. This would be your spot where you could throw on maybe a magnetic nameplate or something else to really kind of customize your trailer, because you're not going to be using this full space. The railing itself is only going to extend from this down to our hinge right here, so you've got all of this space up here to just add your little customization. To mount this, we're going to follow the same procedure. We're going to be drilling in first. All right, we're going to add some butyl tape to the back of this bracket as well, and then we can get it mounted up. Now we will set our bracket in place, and we can start shooting in our hardware. And then any excess butyl tape that you don't want sitting out there, it's really easy if you just come back with a plastic trim panel tool and just kind of scrape it off. Then you're not scratching it, but you could probably also just kind of get it with your fingernails too. At this point now we're ready to attach our handle to our bracket here. So we're gonna remove the nut, pop off our little washer, we'll pull out our bolt here, we'll line up our holes. And looks like I'm gonna have to do the bolt on this side. Don't have quite enough room with the awning. Get that lined up properly. Slide on our plastic washer and then our lock nut. Now we're gonna be needing an 11mm socket and wrench to tighten this down. I'm gonna go until it just kind of starts squeezing these brackets in. We want it to be snug enough it's not gonna come out, but not so snug that now we can't use our railing. But right there, it's all ready to go. We can slide it back up. And we will have a little pin that will pop right into there. I set it down here, let me grab it. All right, then we just pop in our retention clip when we're done, and that is going nowhere. You can't pull it out. Don't have to worry about it popping out while you're on the road, even if it is a bouncy experience. That little pin has a bearing ball inside of it right here that's gonna pop out, and that's gonna prevent that from wanting to fully push out, so it should stop it, and then we'd be able to prevent this from flopping out when we're out on the highway. Well, that's going to do it for our look at and installation of the MORryde Safe-T-Rail here on our 2017 Jayco Eagle Fifth Wheel trailer. My name's Kevin, and if you still have some questions about what's going to be the right step enhancement to make sure that you have a nice, safe experience while you're out camping, then please feel free to reach out to us via our Ask the Experts link, a comment on this video, or a phone call to our customer service department, and we'd be happy to help you out on your journey.